What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk through 6 must-buy low trade targets for Dynasty Fantasy Football. Right now is an interesting time because we have about 4 to 5 weeks until the NFL draft. So we have this snapshot in time of the current Dynasty landscape, and then everything is going to change. We're going to see quarterbacks change teams, or quarterbacks get landing spots. We're going to see players get landing spots. We're going to see a lot happen. Then on the flip side of that, you're going to have running backs getting displaced, wide receiver rooms getting more crowded, quarterbacks gaining or losing weapons. A lot is going to happen here in a month. So right now, you have a few weeks to capitalize on kind of the current landscape before things happen, and then everything changes. So I looked through the Dynasty ADP. I saw 6 values I think aren't going to hold after the NFL draft that we should really be buying right now. So with all that being said, we got 6 players to cover. As always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
Now, as always with these buy and sell trade target videos, they come straight from the Patreon. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find the link in the description, in the comment section down below. You get my top 250 Dynasty rankings. I think I have my top 45 rookie rankings out right now. You have access to my RS grades, my RS grade database dating back to 2007. You get a bunch of stuff. On top of that, in the rankings are my buys and sells. And this is just what we're using for this video today, but this is the top 8 tight ends. So you could go to the position tabs and you see they're tiered. You have Sam Laporta at the top. You have Brock Bowers moving up 2 spots. Kyle Pitts 1 spot. Trey McBride moved down 1 spot. So you can see the change in ranking since my last update. You have prospect here, so my RS grades, my archetypes that are also in the RS grades, and then buy and sell recommendations. Don't freak out. Sam Laporta is a soft sell. If you could somehow net a first to go from Sam Laporta to any of these tight ends in that tier 6, I would. But if that's not on the table, it's not on the table. You just hold them. That's fine. It's a soft sell. Emphasis on the soft. Pause if needed. Then we have hard buy. We have soft buys as well, just across the board. Today we're going to talk about 6 hard buys you should be making in Dynasty. Now sit down, buckle up, because this first one, I got to get some stuff off my chest about Justin Herbert. He is, to me, a massive buy. We have had a bunch of moves happen here. Jim Harbaugh comes in. He hires Greg Roman. They ship out Keenan Allen. They let Mike Williams walk. They let Eckler walk. They let Gerald Everett walk. Their offense right now is Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, and Gus Edwards, and Donald Parham, and Quentin Johnston, and Josh Palmer, and everyone is freaking out. Greg Roman's going to come in. They're going to just run the ball. It's going to be, the Ravens offense, which they had Lamar Jackson, by the way, a guy who scrambles a ton and will never be a top 10 volume passer in the NFL. I think people are overreacting, though, because this is the cheapest that Justin Herbert has been since he was drafted, right? Immediately after his rookie year, he was a top 6 pick in startups. Just right now, this is from Dynasty Data Lab. I'll try to make sure I put a link down below. I probably will. It'll be in the comments. But here, I pulled, so you have March 26, 2023 through March 26, 2024, and you can see he was the 106 at this time last year. He is now the 111. What has changed? I mean, yes, he had a down year, but so did Joe Burrow, and he didn't really move back a whole ton. It's really just this signing that's scaring everybody off of one of the premier, franchise quarterbacks we have in the NFL. And when we play Dynasty Fantasy Football, something I still don't know if it has wheels just yet, but cream quarterbacks rule everything around me. We want those guys, right? We look at that first round. It's Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. The rest, the other 9 players, are quarterbacks. That 101 is assumed to be Caleb Williams. You have Stroud, Lamar, Mahomes, Josh Allen, whatever order you want them. And Justin Herbert is currently valued as the last guy in that first round. To me, I think it'd be very easy to see multiple ways for him to get back into that top 6. I don't think that he's aged out of there. Lamar's older than him. I want to say Mahomes is older than him. It's not an age thing, right? It's just this offensive environment, everything that Justin Herbert won't produce for fantasy. And here's why I think that's a bit overblown, and we're really projecting the floor outcome for, again, one of the premier quarterbacks in all of football. Now, with Justin Herbert and this offense, we're going to go way back, all right? We're going to go way back. This is all of Jim Harbaugh's offenses that he's had from 2007 through 2023, college and NFL. The gold teams, right, so Stanford through the 49ers stint, that's when Greg Roman was on Jim Harbaugh's staff. And you could see it's certainly run heavy, but it's not across the board, right? In 2007, 74th of 120 in pass volume. The year I would really key in on is that 2010 year with Andrew Luck. They go 12-1, right? So you could go down to the bottom, J.J. McCarthy, 15-0. They don't run the ball at all. 24.1 pass attempts per game, 122nd of 133 teams. But when you have a guy like Andrew Luck and you want to pass the ball and you don't have a Michigan run game, offensive line, defense, everything across the board, and you essentially just have Andrew Luck and the Stanford team around him, you have 9.7 adjusted yards per attempt. That's really good. And 29.2 pass attempts per game, which isn't a crazy amount, but it's about league average. And that's all we really need from Justin Herbert for him to overcome the expectations everyone has for him. Everyone right now thinks that this is going to be a bottom 5 pass volume offense, and it's not going to be good for fantasy. But we've seen routinely Harbaugh have about league average passing volume when it made sense for his team. You have at the top TC Ostrander. They had 74th of 120 college teams in terms of pass attempts per game. That was the year they went 4-8, right? When they lose games, it makes sense for them to pass the ball more. Then you have across the bottom, Justin Herbert's career averages. He's 30-32 in his career. This is a Chargers team that's not going to go, 12-1 or 15-0. Even though those are college records, you get what I'm saying. They're not going to have that same win percentage. But he's a quarterback who doesn't rush the ball a lot, just 3.6 rush attempts per game. His efficiency isn't great at 7.3, but that's because he's been such a high-volume quarterback. This is a guy, if we look back to his college days at Oregon, he played 4 years at Oregon, and in those years, they finished in the Pac-12, so only 12 teams, 7th, 11th, 9th, and 8th in pass attempts per game. They were never even in the top half of the Pac-12 in pass attempts per game, and even still, he gets drafted highly. He has a 32 passing touchdown season. He was still an amazing quarterback. He has thrived in low-volume passing situations. It's just been he's had like 3 passing offensive coordinators at this point in his career. He's had bad defenses and injury-riddled seasons to go along with that. So a lot has gone wrong and pushed the passing volume up. I don't think that we can, I saw somebody on Twitter today extrapolate that 7.3 yards per attempt to a bottom 5 passing volume offense. And sure, that would look pretty awful. But I would say 2 things. First of all, the efficiency is not there because you're not going to have a lot of efficiency when you have top 5 passing volume. You can't extrapolate, a 700 pass attempt season down to a 500 pass attempt season. Like, we can't act like Justin Herbert is Jameis Winston, where he needs to be top 5 in pass attempts to have a good fantasy season. Again, this is a really good quarterback. Now, when we kind of project things out here, we can see this being, I could see this offense being almost 49ers-like, where it's a high-efficiency, low-volume offense, and that's a good thing, right? We've seen Greg Roman do that before as well, where this is all of his offensive coordinator jobs ranked by net yards per attempt. So that's passing efficiency. He has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 out of those 10 years, he's had a top 12 passing efficiency offense. That's pretty dang good. Right? That's pretty good. It's not that he's not had an efficient passing offense, it's just that they've been low volume. But that's been by choice, right? If we pull up that graphic again and we see the quarterbacks that they've had to use, especially during that gold period, you have Andrew Luck. Now, by the way, that first Andrew Luck season, they had Toby Gerhart. Put some respect on Toby Gerhart's name. He had 2,000 yards from scrimmage. I think he had Heisman votes in 2009. Whatever he did in the NFL, he wasn't really that great. But in college, Toby Gerhart was that guy. He leaves for the NFL. Andrew Luck comes in. Andrew Luck was, of course, there before, but now he's like a sophomore. He's the head of the team, and they're league average in pass attempts, and that's really what I'd be looking for because, again, you look at those other quarterbacks. Alex Smith was pretty mid in 2011 or whatever. Then you had Colin Kaepernick 3 straight years, a scrambling quarterback. Same thing with Lamar Jackson, with Greg Roman, with a Lamar Jackson. So it's tough for me to be like, yeah, this is going to be the Colin Kaepernick, Lamar Jackson offense when we have Justin Herbert, a guy who has 3.6 rush attempts per game over his entire career. Now, we have a couple things we can look at. First of all, I want to show you guys this thread that I was just scrolling Twitter this morning, and I found this thread, and it's really, really good stuff. Shout out to this guy on Twitter, what the heck is this? MIPBJ2, at MIPBJ2. This is amazing data. So this is the thread. People are expecting the Chargers offense to be run heavy to the point that imbeciles are suggesting Harbaugh might want to trade away Justin Herbert. Last time Harbaugh was in the NFL, he had the 4th most run-heavy offense, and that's been his calling card in college. But wait, so this is 2011 to 2014 when he was in the NFL. You see San Fran down here. It's San Fran, it's Houston, it's the Jets, and it's Seattle in terms of the most run-heavy teams during that span. If we look throughout the game, San Francisco in red, was actually the middle of the pack, 14th in the first half, but cranked it up to the most run-heavy in the second half, compared to other run-heavy teams down below, right? Where you can see this is my Jets here, where, all right, we're going to run the hell out of the ball. We're going to establish a run. We're going to establish a run. We're going to establish a run. Oh, my God, we're losing. And then we're passing the ball. So, like, they wanted to run the ball a ton, and the games were kind of forced them to pass it. But it's kind of the opposite for San Francisco, where they were about league average, right? The guy says 14th here in pass rate for the first half. And then because they're a team that went 44-19, they would just bleed the clock and run the ball in the second half of the game every single time. Now, this is a team with not a ton of weapons right now, right? We talked about what their offense is. This is not a team, their defense isn't that great either. They're not going to be sitting on a ton of leads. They're in a division with Patrick Mahomes in the NFL with a bottom, I'll be generous, a bottom 12 roster right now. They're not going to beat a 44-19 team, this Chargers team, so I don't really see how they're going to be running the ball all that much. And I'm not pulling that out of thin air. This is from Mike Clay, which, by the way, Mike Clay's projections have come out, so just be on the lookout for that. We use his projections all the time, and you can see in the unit grades area, like don't even pay attention to the team stats yet. We're going to talk about that later. But the unit grades area, it's out of a 4.0 scale. So, of course, QB is amazing. Edge is amazing. Safety is amazing. But that gives you the 19th best offense, the 27th best defense, the 23rd best overall team. So this is, in fact, not a team that is at least reasonable projected to go 44-19, whatever that win percentage would be over a 17-game season. So that's how I have a hard time seeing how this works. Now, further in this thread, splitting out wins on the left, wins and losses on the right. Wins, everyone cranks up the runs late, but few did it to the degree San Francisco did. San Francisco really cranked it up there, where you can see all the way in this range when they were winning football games in the second half. Then losses pretty middle of the road and then backs off. So it's not like they're starting down here, right? And they're like already run heavy out the gate. And then up here. It's not like they're super run heavy out the gate and they're up here and then they're passing the ball late. They are middle of the pack. So again, this is about a league average passing offense that would just pass the ball or run the ball more than average based on the outcome of the game. And you can see here, it's as if they wait until halftime to decide whether to alter their game plan and then do it dramatically. I'm comparing here to other teams that span win percentage and rush percentage, wins red and losses blue. So you can see, just like these other teams, are much more like natural, right? Where the reds are wins, the blues are losses. So in like wins, you can see here, like most teams, they have kind of like a game plan coming out where they're like running the ball a bunch and they maybe have to pass it and they run the ball a ton. And there's like this like U shape going on to all these. Same thing with like in the losses, where just like out the gate, they're losing, they're passing the ball, they're passing the ball. But here they have a very strict run game, or a very strict game plan that's about league average run volume or pass volume, whatever you want to pick. It's about league average across the board. And then based on if they're winning or losing at halftime, they're going to run the ball if they're winning, pass the ball if they're losing. And that is like a crazy, crazy stark difference compared to the others. Like this to me screams a lot like the Mike McCarthy situation last year, where everyone thought he goes to Dallas, they're going to run the ball, establish the run. What do you know? They're top 10 at worst in pass attempts, and they're a great passing offense to target, right? CD was a great value. Same thing with Dak Prescott. Same thing with Jake Ferguson across the board. I could see that being the Chargers this year. Now, this also makes sense when breaking out year by year. All 4 years, So this is all 4 years here. Same team. It's like pretty much the same thing going on here, where they are middle of the road first half, and then they are running the hell out of the football towards the end. All right. So we can see here that unless you think this Chargers offense is going to go, unless you think the Chargers team as a whole is going to go 13-4 or like 12-5, they're not going to be bottom 5 in pass attempts, because again, this is not a team that's all that good. Like they're not going to be sitting on leads all the time. So we've seen, when all else is equal, that Jim Harbaugh has passed the ball at about a league average rate, and and Justin Herbert's good enough to me that he can produce on a league average rate. He doesn't need to have the top 10 most pass attempts in the league to produce. He's a good football player, right? And right now, we look at the Mike Clay projection. He has him a little bit low. 25th in dropbacks, 24th most attempts, 20th completions, 13th most touchdowns, 31st in interceptions. So that itself displays the kind of efficiency Justin Herbert has in his projections. Now, again, the yards per attempt's not there, but I really do think that's a volume thing. Clay doesn't really agree. He agrees slightly, right? 24th attempts, 22nd in yards, but 13th most touchdowns on the 24th most attempts. He has a great touchdown rate. He has a great interception rate, 31st most interceptions. So he throws a lot of touchdowns. He doesn't throw a lot of picks, and we have room for efficiency to be there in a play action type scheme with Greg Roman, and that should be exciting. Now, even if we look back to last year, we had multiple top 12 quarterbacks: Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, all finished as QB1s. They had the 15th, 32nd, and 28th most pass attempts. Again, like, I don't know, it's crazy that I have to remind people how good Justin Herbert is, but he's really good at football. Since he's been drafted, he has been the QB6 in points per game, 19.8 points per game over a 62-game sample. That's pretty dang good. Again, very high passing volume, but I think we're going to see more efficiency when we lower those attempts down. I think he can still be a top 12, difference-making type quarterback, right? He's had more points per game than Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's still up there in the top 6. I think that he can pace with a guy like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. And on top of that, we have a nice little stat from Dynasty IM. This is Ian Miller. Quarterbacks to post multiple 24-plus point per game seasons in their first 4 years. This is 6-point passing touchdowns. You have Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Justin Herbert. Yet according to Keep Trade Cut, no player in the top 50 has lost more value over the past month than Herbert by Justin Herbert. And I agree. Now, we also have multiple outs where if you buy now, you have potential for value gain because the Chargers have so much damn draft capital. Right now, the consensus mock draft has them taking Malik Nabers. If they take Malik Nabers, the optics all change. Oh, they're investing in the passing offense. Maybe they're not going to be bottom 5 in pass attempts and have this like prehistoric offense. They also have, if they decide to take Joe Alt or something at 5th, or they trade back, they have so much damn draft capital. They have the 4th most draft value in this draft. And not only have the 5th overall pick, they have the 37th, the 69th, the 105th, the 110th. That could be, they could take a wide receiver at 37, like Keon Coleman or something. They could take at 69, they could take like a Jalen McMillan. 105, they could take a Javon Baker. At the 5th pick, they could even take a Brock Bowers. Like, there's so much opportunity for them to add pass catchers that I wouldn't assume that this like skeleton, like I don't even know what I would call it, this like bare bones roster is what they're going to be using. This is a guy in Jim Harbaugh who's old. He's not like trying to hunker down and rebuild with this team. This is a guy that wants to win games right away. I think there's a lot of moves that are still yet to be made. They're not going to build around Gus Edwards and like the Funky Bunch. I can promise you that. So I like the idea of buying him now. And my favorite thing to do to get him, I feel good about trading any pick that's like the 106 or later. I don't think you can do that straight up, but I think you can maybe even put a little sweetener in there, like the 106 and like a future second, or the 106 and like the 112 or something. I think I would, or the 112. I would do that as well. I also like tearing up from Tua, Purdy, or Goff, all guys that I find it kind of hard for any of them to be in the top 6 conversation in startup. I could see Justin Herbert getting right back there after getting Malik Nabers, getting Marvin Harrison Jr., or getting one of those guys or a lesser extent, and then like the first 4 weeks, he's the same Justin Herbert he's always been, and boom, he's back in like the top 7 pick. So I'm a massive fan of buying Justin Herbert. Now you might say, Ron, what are we buying him for? Well, today we're going to use Dynasty Daddy. I'm very curious to know how you guys are going to feel about this. Let me know if you don't like this website. I always kind of bounce around. I've been using Fantasy Calc for a while, but they don't show the exact pick for these trades. So it'd just be like a random 2024 first. I think a month out, I need more context than that, So this is the only one I could find. It's dynastydaddy.com. It pulls, searching from a freaking trillion or whatever that is. Actual leagues, the database updates every 8 hours. You can even see here, it's pretty cool. They have like the most traded players in these bubbles here. And you can see Justin Herbert's actually pretty big down here, traded a ton. So we have the settings on like reasonable tight end premiums, 0.5 or 1 PPR, 12 teamers, Dynasty 2 quarterback leagues. Now, when we look at the trades that he's gone for here, that's crazy. Some of these are going to be crazy. I'll just be straight up with you guys. Some of these are going to be crazy, but we will find some that I like. Now, if you could trade Jordan Love in 3 seconds for Justin Herbert and Jaden Reed, like I'm not even really going to count these, I would do that. Jordan Love in 3 seconds for Justin Herbert and Jaden Reed, I would do this as well. 107, 106, and the 212 for Herbert and a 25 first back. Yeah. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer. I have Herbert in a couple leagues. You're not going to send out these kind of offers to me and I'm going to take them. So keep that in mind. There's a certain person we are targeting here. There are people that are like screaming the sky is falling on Justin Herbert. They're moving him to they're moving him from that first round area down to like your Dak Purdy, 2-3 turn area, like middle of the second in startups. There might be a guy like that in your league who has Herbert and is dying to get him off of his team for whatever reason. There's people I respect in the fantasy space that I've seen come out on Twitter and say like they wouldn't take him in the first round, or they have him in like as a late second in a recent rankings update. There is a crowd out there you're going to be able to, finesse a little bit. Anthony Richardson in the 308 for Herbert. That one feels a little bit lateral to me. JT in the 108 for Herbert. That one's about clean. If I was a rebuilding team and I wanted to get JT off my team in the 108, and let's say I had two other picks in this draft, this to me would be fine. Herbert isn't necessarily a rebuilding or a contending pick. I think that he's or trade target. I think he's fine for either. I like the idea of just storing value in him as a rebuilder, and he could be a mid-first by this time next year, and you don't have to scramble, because like even right now, if let's say you are trying to compete in 2024 and you just rebuilded in 2023, you draft Caleb at 101. He might be CJ Stroud, but if he's not, you're not really going to be able to compete right out the gate. Like you kind of do need your blue chip stocks like your Herberts, like guys you can depend on to be upper echelon quarterbacks in fantasy. What else? Anything stick out? 106, 206, 304 for Herbert. I would do that all day long. Again, any outside of those top 5 picks, I would be looking to sort of see what I could do for Herbert. Now, 103, 112 and Trey Tucker, I think I'd pass. But these are close, but it feels like you're selling out your ceiling. Like I'd rather, if I could do 102 or the 103 for Herbert, 103 gets close for me. I wouldn't do this 112 as well, but if it was 103 and Trey Tucker for Herbert in a second, I would. 102, I'm a little bit colder on this one, because I think that deal is probably there for you still when you're on the clock or like closer to the draft. Fields in the 104, that one's close. I don't love it. Does anything else stick out? 105 in a future first. 105 in a future first, I think I would. If I needed a quarterback, I think I would pay an extra first to go from, say, like Jaden Daniels, if he's there, to Herbert. But I would feel much more comfortable if it was the 106. I will just be honest. Anything else stick out? Not really. I feel like we've covered this one. I would do as well. Just going to split. Baker's another one. If you could tear up from him somehow, or yeah, if I was a rebuilding team on this side, and it's like Jacobs, Baker, Tyreek, and I'm just trying to get those guys off my team, and I can somehow turn that into Herbert, I would do that all day. You have to remember, a year ago, Justin Herbert was damn near untouchable, and there is a path for him to get back there as well. Now, that's been a 22-minute video on Justin Herbert, but we're going to keep going here. Now, next up, we have Tank Dell. I love Tank Dell as a buy. People like Tank Dell, but they don't like him quite enough, is kind of what I have here. We can see here on Keep Trade Cut, to me, right, like right now, he's in this area. He's right in the like he is, it's Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, then Jordan Addison on Keep Trade Cut. To me, Tank Dell and Rashee Rice are a tier above Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, just based on what they did in year one. I would have him somewhere near the top of this tier, like somewhere in that Nico Collins, Michael Pittman range behind Jalen Waddle, especially for Tank Dell. Now, why do I say that? Well, because Tank Dell had a historic year one. I know that everyone knows he had a historic year one, but you don't really get it until you see it in motion here. Now, this is just sorting year one points per game for rookie wide receivers. Now, with Tank Dell, we have 16.5 because we're not counting that week 13 game where he had 0 points and he got hurt. And if we look at that, he has the 6th best rookie point per game year since 2007, which is bonkers. His yards per out run, 2.22. That's solid. 16.5 points per game, solid. 83.3 PFF grade, also solid. He checks all the boxes. And when we're not counting the 2023 rookies, 8 out of 10 of these wide receivers, right? This is a list with Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Ayuk, Waddle, Keenan Allen, AJ Green. Your worst wide receivers on this list, your floor here is Jalen Waddle and Brandon Ayuk. That's a pretty good consolation prize. Now, when we talk about this cohort, 8 out of 10 of them have had multiple top 12 finishes in fantasy football. Now, if you want to say, well, but Ron, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, these guys had a better pedigree than Tank Dell, I think it's a little bit irrelevant after year one, but we can even take it a step further. Here's like what his sophomore comps would be. Or if you look at players who came in with similar expectations, similar prospect profiles, and we look at what they did in year one, this is the list that he comes out with, where it's Tyreek Hill, Stefon Diggs, Michael Thomas, Cooper Kupp, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Terry McLaurin is the worst option in this list. Now, I get he's old, right? He's a guy who's like 24 at this point, halfway through 24. So he's already in that age range of your T. Higgins, of your Devontae Smith. But to me, I don't care a ton because of where he's going in Underdog. Now, by the way, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Ron. When you sign up, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. Promo code Ron. You can find the link in the description in the comment section down below. It'll take you right there. It'll use promo code Ron. You can hop in. They have big board drafts right now. You can draft in, where this is fantasy football before the draft. You can draft the rookies. You can draft everybody. And Tank Dell right now has an ADP of 29.5. So he is already a third-round redraft pick. And that's ahead, right? That's ahead of your Jalen Waddle, your Michael Pittman. That's ahead of DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, all of those guys that are sometimes ranked above him or in the same tier. So he's already getting that respect and redraft by the market. He had a historic year one. I do really like him. Now, the one thing that I can say is a fair thing is he got hurt last year, right? Is that injury still going to linger for Tank Dell? Now, I'm not a doctor. I never really pretend to be. But we do have like multiple tweets kind of talking through it. This is Jeff Mueller. And the first thing is regression to the mean. Is no one else worried about Tank Dell making his way back to 100% next year coming off a broken leg? Didn't we just learn this lesson with Tony Pollard? Jeff then says stop using Tony Pollard as the comp when the more accurate return to play comp from a fractured fibula, which is what Tank Dell had. A fractured fibula. It's like, I don't know, I think it's like somewhere near your shin. For Tank Dell is Jalen Waddle. And I suppose Waddle's year one post-injury production wasn't that bad. He only had 104 catches. So that breakout year for Waddle was after his fractured fibula. And it doesn't really seem to be like an issue for Tank Dell. And this is somebody more numbers-oriented with Deepak Chona. Tank Dell, likely surgery. This was December 3rd. He said likely surgery after the injury. Return average 4-month. Data projects no lingering impact by the start of 2024 season. So to me, he should be good to go. So, like, I like Tank Dell. Again, I have him in a tier above your Addison and Flowers. Addison's now going to be competing with Jefferson with Sam Darnold as his quarterback, and Zay Flowers has the weird allegations going on, and then also he's going to be in a low-volume passing offense with Lamar Jackson, where I haven't even mentioned Tank Dell has C.J. Stroud throwing to him for at least the remainder of both of their rookie contracts. And C.J. Stroud was the one who called up the Texans and said, hey, draft Tank Dell. So they have, I don't like to buy into that too much, but it is almost like that, Burrow Chase connection where they're like really good friends, and you could tell CJ Stroud was very upset when he got hurt. I want to bet on that guy. So I like Tank Dell. I've always been this guy who is fine pivoting after year one. I wasn't high on him coming out of the draft, but this is where we buy now and why I have so many Ayuk shares on my teams, because we pivot after year one. Now, what we can get when we trade for Tank Dell, or not what we can get for him, but what we can send out for Tank Dell. Let's see. Some of these are a little bit much, I will say. All of these aren't, I'm not going to agree with. JT Cup in a third for Tank Dell, a random first and a 203. I think I would do that. If I could somehow turn Cup into Dell or Cup and a running back into Dell and like extra firsts, I would. I don't even want to entertain the ones that are just too many pieces for me to wrap my head around. This one is great. The 108 and a future second for Tank Dell and junk for sure. I don't mind any pick outside of the top 7 for Tank Dell. I don't mind. You have Tank Dell in the 110 for the 106 and the 111. That one's close. Tank Dell and Jaden Reed for IU, Calvin Ridley, and 307. I would do that in a heartbeat. Anything else? Nico Collins for Tank Dell in a 304. That one feels super lateral. Levis a second and a third. I would if I didn't need a quarterback. Let's look at one more page. I probably shouldn't spend as much time as I am looking through all of these. Metcalf, Geno in a third. You know what? I don't hate that. If I could sell JSN for Tank Dell plus, sign me up for that. Is really all I'll say. This one is ridiculous. Rodgers, Mike Williams in a second for Tank. Get out of here with that. If you can, this is a great one too. If you can turn any of your Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, let's say you have like Derrick Henry and James Cook. You don't really need James Cook. Or Rashad White's really more of my gripe. I'm fine with James Cook and Pacheco, but they're all in that same area of like running backs that aren't like hero RBs I like, or like cheap running backs I like, so they don't really fit the build that I'm trying to go for most of the time. But if you can turn Rashad White in a third into Tank, like if you could do, this is essentially Rashad White for Tank Dell straight up, which I find pretty wild. But some people do absolutely love Rashad White. Yeah, see, this is where we're getting to like crazy territory. Eckler in a second for Tank Dell. Yes, like he is getting disrespected. This one's really close, 110 and the 210 for Tank Dell. But I absolutely would. And then Kelce for Tank Dell in like multiple draft picks. Yeah, like sign me up. So again, he's getting disrespected in some leagues. I don't know if you can get those trades in every single one of your leagues. I'm not saying you can. I'm just trying to show options here. Again, it's not going to be perfect when I show these trade targets, but they are trades that are happening in real life. Now, our next trade target we're going to talk through here is Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce. This is somebody who, even at his age of like 32 a couple seasons ago, in tight end premium, you would have to really pay up for him just because he was this massive, massive advantage. And now he is so cheap compared to that. His all-time high in like their metric for Dynasty value points was 7,425. He is now half of that at 3,947 keep trade cut points. He is dirt cheap compared to what you've had to pay for Kelce in the past. Now, the reason I like him is because the age is priced in, right? Before then, it was always like, okay, you have to pay up for tight end production, but you do it and you get Kelce and you know, he dies on your roster. He's going to rot and it's going to be ugly because he's going to lose value like we've seen over the last year. But he's going to be rotting away on like a rebuilding team, right? Maybe that team got orphaned and now has Kelce and it has like 3 draft picks and the guy really just wants to get rid of Kelce. There's going to be a lot of teams out there like that where they have their window, they push their chips in, and now they're staring at a Kelce on a team that's not going to make the playoffs next year. And that's where you strike, especially because Kelce, he's old, he's 34, but again, it's priced in. So you're not overpaying when you look at his age. Now, I took his Dynasty ADP, which is again from Adeko at Dynasty Data Lab. I took the Underdog ADP, which is redraft ADP, and their 2023 points per game of the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tight ends in redraft. And when we look at their points per game, Kelce had the most points per game. He was the tight end 1 in points per game last year. He is currently the tight end 2 on Underdog. And despite that, I'm not even saying that he should be valued more. I'm really just saying if you're a contender and you see a Kelce just kind of collecting dust on a team that's not really competing, you need to strike. Because we look at contending value. We just look at, the difference between their Dynasty ADP and their redraft ADP. He has the biggest discrepancy by far. He is giving you the same value as your Laportas, your McBrides in terms of, 2024 winning, and he is a fraction of the price, which seems pretty obvious, but I kind of love buying him on like a contending team where, like, let's say I have like a Darren Waller or a Cole Kmet. I don't really feel good about my tight end, and maybe I'm looking at like the 112. I don't really want to use that pick anyways. I love the idea of going out and getting Kelce. I also like the idea of, again, if you're a contending team, Hawkinson's coming off the ACL. 2024 is not going to be his year. So if you can sell Hawkinson, I do think you can do this, by the way. I think you can sell Hawkinson for Kelce plus, maybe even Kelce in a first for TJ Hawkinson. I think that is on the table. Now, when we go to dynastydaddy.com, which, by the way, I hate saying daddy every time I have to say this website. We have this. Let's see. What's he going? I mean, come on. 204 and a third. I mean, yes. All right, now this is just too much now. Let's see. All right, this one's more reasonable. A first and a second for Kamara, Kelce. A future first and second for Stafford, Kamara, Kelce. Even if you're a rebuilding team, I actually don't hate that. I mean, 2 seconds for Kelce. Yes. Like, yeah. Ingram and like a second and third for Kelce. Yes. All right, now this one I can't do. I can't get there. We'll pick out one more. I think we'll make a rule because, like, I could scroll this for days until I find the perfect pick. 202 for Kelce. I mean, come on. Right in the 25 first. This is dead even to me. So if you wanted to know, like, Ron, what's your exact value? This is dead even. 25 first for Kelce. All right. So moving on to the next player. Moving forward, we'll try to do only 3 of those because I end up scrolling through all of them. All right. Our fourth buy here, Stefon Diggs. Now, we're kind of shifting into our contending. The rest of these buys are contending buys. Tank Dell and Justin Herbert, I think, are buys for either rebuilding teams or contenders. You can really spin it either way. But with Stefon Diggs, he's really plummeted. And yes, he had a really rough, back half of the season last year. Yes, he's getting older, but he has Josh Allen on his team, right? And Josh Allen is an amazing, amazing quarterback. And you can't sit here and look at me with a straight face and tell me a wide receiver who went over 100 yards or 100 yards or more in 5 of his first 6 games, magically just like became washed and fell off. I'm just personally not buying it. Now, when we compare his last year to a bunch of his other years, right, 2023 through 2019, still had an 80-plus receiving grade, was still fine across the board, 100-plus catches. It was just an efficiency thing. His yards per reception was down. He didn't have as many touchdowns. It was simply just an efficiency thing for Stefon Diggs. And we've seen that before. We saw it in his down year in 2021, right? 2020, he was amazing, 127 catches, 8 touchdowns, 1,500 yards. That went down to 103, 1,210. It was seen as a down year for Stefon Diggs. And it really wasn't all that bad, right? It really wasn't that terrible for the guy. Now, he was still producing, he was still a top 12 wide receiver. Now, the big thing is going to be volume, right? Because you have Joe Brady coming in. And when Joe Brady came in last year, they passed the ball less, right? They went from 35 pass attempts per game to 32.71, which 32.71 would have been 23rd in pass attempts per game last year. Now, I will say they went 6-1 over that span. They were winning a lot of games. They were chewing clock with James Cook. I think that they'll be more like league average, where if we look across the board, I charted out Joe Brady and how much they passed the ball with Joe Brady over in Carolina. Hold on, I got to bring that up. I believe I have that picture somewhere. I could have sworn I did that research. Did I not? Please. Here it is. Just bear with me, folks. Nope, that is not it. God. I hate when this happens. All right, so I don't think I have it. Maybe I should take a pic. Maybe I just decided to scrap that data. But yeah, he was much closer to league average when he was with the Panthers. We also saw with the Panthers, he had a 165 target season with DJ Moore. So if you want to say, he's not going to target one wide receiver, that's not true. He was the coach or the offensive coordinator of the Panthers. They fed DJ Moore. He was also the offensive coordinator on the Panthers when they had 3 top 25 wide receivers in Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. He is not going to come in here. And again, same thing with Justin Herbert. The players on your team dictate your tendencies. And when you have Josh Allen, you're not just going to be like a run-heavy team. They're not going to just become, like this, just like run the ball, super heavy type team. They have James Cook. He's not, he's not Adrian Peterson in his prime. Like that's just not how this offense is going to run. So I see this being a lot more like league average. And when you look at the team, you have nobody in that wide receiver room, right? Gabe Davis is gone. I guess they brought in Curtis Samuel, who I'm excited about, but that's still like wide receiver 60 in Dynasty, like not really anybody to worry about. And when you look at what Mike Clay has them projected for, it's pretty solid, right? Like we can see Stefon Diggs here. Stefon Diggs, he has projected to be the wide receiver 12 in fantasy. This is a 15-game sample, though, so like you have to extend it out. But like 90 catches, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, wide receiver 12. And he has them 13th in dropbacks, which is a lot more than you would think. 7th in completions, 12th in yards, 9th in touchdowns, while also still being a top 10 rush attempt team. So this is a team that's going to play up-tempo. I think their defense, 18th ranked here, you can see with the Mike Clay unit grades. This is a team that's not going to be able to sit, on leads a bunch. They're not going to go 6-1 or not going to extrapolate 6-1 over a 16-game season. It was just that individual sample. So I don't really buy the idea that this is going to be a run-heavy team. I don't buy the idea that Stefon Diggs forgot how to play football. I was debating waiting until Matt Harmon dropped his reception perception for Stefon Diggs to ever put out Stefon Diggs as a buy candidate. But I think if they go into the draft and they don't take A.D. Mitchell or something in the late first, I think his value is going to rebound just a little bit, just a hair, maybe a round in startup value. So I don't mind buying him now before then. Matt Harmon did do an interview at the Combine with Stefon Diggs, and he compared it to that year with the Vikings where they fired their offensive coordinator. I think it was like Kubiak or Stefanski, something in that range. And he had a tough, last stretch of the season. Same thing that happened now, right? When your offensive coordinator gets fired, you're going to have a tough back end of the season, right? When we look at what he did last year, they fired Ken Dorsey after the Denver game, right? And after the Denver game, that's when things kind of started to go really far downhill, right? Where like his last 6 games, only 2 of them were like over 50 yards receiving. It's tough. When you have like a new scheme and a new way of doing things, it's going to be a tough way to play football. Now as well, some of his best years were with his higher ADOTs, like 12, 12-ish yards downfield. Last year it was more like 10. When you have Gabe Davis out there, you're going to have Stefon Diggs running a lot underneath. I think Stefon Diggs is much better. Not much better, but he's good underneath, intermediate. He's good everywhere. But you also want to use him down the field. I'm trying to think. It might have been versus the Jets, but like Stefon Diggs has had, even just in the playoffs and like random moments where he has like, almost like a 25-yard dig where he runs like 25 yards downfield. He cuts in and Josh Allen finds him over the middle of the field. Stefon Diggs with no Gabe Davis, I think he's going to be more of like a deep threat type role. Obviously, he's not going to be freaking Deshaun Jackson or whatever, but you're going to see more efficient if he gets targets downfield is what I'm trying to say here. So I still like Stefon Diggs. I don't think that he's washed. It's not going to be all that difficult to see how he can help a contending team. Where you get Stefon Diggs, he gives you top 12 points per game, and this is the cheapest he's been pretty much ever. Now, when you can see what you can pay to buy Stefon Diggs, I don't know why I'm struggling to talk here today, fellas, but I mean, Najee for Diggs, and you're moving from 201 and Najee for Diggs in the 211. That's about even to me. If I was a contending team, I'm fine with that. Zach Moss, the 102 for Diggs, I can't do that. Let's see. Let's pick out a couple more. What's this? 2 seconds and a fourth for McLaurin. I mean, that's ridiculous. A second and a third for Diggs. That's ridiculous as well. CeeDee Lamb for Diggs in the 102. I think I take that every day of the week. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I take that. I can't do that with Lamar. I mean, this is ridiculous. Gave a second. I'm not going to even entertain that one. I do like this. If you can take McCaffrey, team really wants a running back for some reason, McCaffrey, and you could get Diggs, the 111 and a future first if you just add a second in there. All day for me. 112, Deontay and Ramondre for Diggs and Kirk. That one is pretty much even in my eyes, but you can see, like, again, this is going to be one of those things where if the Stefon Diggs owner doesn't look like he's trying to contend, I like this. McBride, I know there's some of you guys out there, and I think I even had a roster too, where McBride and Laporta were dirt cheap going into the season, so you might have a team with McBride and Laporta. If you wanted to ship one of them off, I really don't mind the idea of doing something like this if you can't get really good draft capital or something you want. You get Diggs and some capital, absolutely fine with that. Now, moving on to our fifth trade target here today, we have James Conner. Now, James Conner's not sexy. He's not going to win your league. But if you find yourself as a team that's trying to contend or anything among those lines, really, where, I don't know, if you're like ending a rebuild and you're just trying to contend or like your running backs kind of suck, I don't love trading for needs this far out and like trying to assemble your redraft roster in Dynasty. But James Conner is so cheap, and I think you do have the upside where if we come out of the NFL draft and the Cardinals get Marvin Harrison Jr. and everyone's excited about this offense and they don't draft a running back on day 2, James Conner might get steamed up a little bit. And even if he doesn't, it's not really a value thing. It's really more he is the best, in my opinion, he is the best value producing running back you can have, like as a hero RB or just a running back in the mix for your team. He was surprisingly really good last year. Like, he is not washed whatsoever. This is from the David Zach rushing yards over expected, yards created over expected, which is just like, it's adjusted for offensive line, defensive stacked box, yards before contact, after contact, adjusted for line yards, volume. It's just like an all-encompassing stat. James Conner was fourth in that behind Achane, McCaffrey, Kyron Williams. To me, that's a list that checks out, especially with, Jalen Warren, Khalil Herbert, Raheem Mostert, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brees, Bijan, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry. Like, it passes the sniff test to me. You read through those running backs, they're all good. And then if you want to look more at the numbers with like PFF, he was second in yards at the contact per attempt, fourth in elusiveness rating, fifth in explosive run percentage, fifth in PFF rush grade, sixth in missed tackles forced per attempt, fourth in rushing yards over expected per attempt, EPA per rush, fifth in the NFL, and then we showed the yards created over expected. Last year, he was the RB13 in points per game. He actually outproduced his volume. We can see he's the RB13 in points per game at 15.5, and then he actually outproduced his volume, right? 14 points per game is his expected points per game based on his carries, goal line work, all of that. He was actually more efficient than his given volume, which we rarely see for running backs that are his age. Now, we also know the Cardinals want to run the football. Now, we look in this backfield, there's nothing else going on. It's Amari DeMarcado, Michael Carter, guys that are just like pass-catching running backs. And we look here, neutral pass frequency in 2023, the Cardinals were the second highest run rate in neutral situations last year. So that's early downs, not garbage time. They want to run the football. and James Conner is right there. And then when we look through the Mike Clay projection, so this is what Mike Clay has projected for these running backs next year. James Conner, right, when we look at the point per game projections for Mike Clay, and then the Dynasty ADP, this is sorted by Dynasty ADP. You go down. Kamara, I'll say, Kamara, Mixon, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry, like that little range, like what I'm putting here at the bottom here, that's a nice little spot to buy for contenders as well. But you can see, you go down, it's like, Najee's in the red at 12.5, Pollard in the red at 12.3. James Conner is then at 14.8 at 124. Dynasty ADP of 124 with 14.8 projected points per game. Now, Nick Chubb is down there too as a good value, but off the ACL, I'm much more wary to just like take his projection by face value. But as things stand right now, James Conner should flirt with 15 points per game, and he is dirt cheap. So I don't mind buying him as it stands on contending rosters. Now, we look at what he's trading for. It can't be too much, right? It can't be. It really, yeah, Rico Dowdle in a future second. Yes. 204 for Conner, that's a little bit steep. What can you do? I don't mind. I'm not even going to really like this is a trade I'd want Jefferson. But if you are doing one of these like 4 for 4 or like 4 for 1, or stick James Conner in the back end of that, if you are a contending team. What else? Or any of these? Can I just get like a couple, like just James Conner? Yeah, James Conner for the 307 and Brissett. Like these are the kind of deals I'm talking about where you're just getting him, especially on a team that like went all in last year, knows they can't compete. 301 for James Conner all day. Early seconds too much for me. I would need like straight up. For me, I would need like 212, 211 would be what I'd be willing to pay for James Conner. Quentin Johnson 204 for James Conner in the 209. That one's a little weird to me. Mayer and AJ Dillon for James Conner in a second. I don't love that. This one's absurd. Anything else stick out as just like, yeah, like Sky Moore and some junk, 4 and a 3 for James Conner. Like I'm saying, if you can go dumpster diving for James Conner, I would. Because like right now, the reason I'm even recommending any of these contending buys is because like right now, through rookie draft season is when veterans and contending pieces are going to be their absolute cheapest, because then after rookie drafts, everyone's going to be looking towards week 1, what my team look like for then, and that's when the veterans are going to come back up because they're going to be closer to scoring the fantasy points. So right now, if you can just, kick the tires and get some budget deals on these contending pieces, I absolutely would. And the final contending buy that we'll have here today is Geno Smith. And this is just like, if you find yourself and you need a quarterback, for one reason or another, I like Geno as just like a nice slick buy. A nice slick buy. When you look at what he's been going for, right? Like this is not someone I buy as my QB1, but my QB2s are weak. Maybe I was like relying on Sam Howell last year, and I don't really have a draft pick to get into, your Drake May area, your Jaden Daniels, your Caleb Williams area. Then I don't mind, just buying Geno Smith for real low. It seems like they traded for Sam Howell, and that moved his value down way more. Like right now, he's valued in like your Russell Wilson range, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't play the entire season. Like it doesn't seem like they brought in Sam Howell to replace Geno Smith. It seemed like it was more of an insurance plan. But he peaked at QB 17 on Keep Trade Cut. He is now the QB 30. Like he is, in terms of quarterbacks, he is dirt cheap. Now when we look at last year, I think it's overblown how bad he was. You have to remember, he was banged up. He had a bruised right elbow, which that's on his throwing arm. I'm assuming that that's going to be an issue. He had a bruised right elbow and then a groin strain that put him on 3 injury reports and 1 game missed. Now, his stats, given that info, wasn't even that terrible. 2022 to 2023, right? 2022, oh my goodness, man. 2022 wasn't even an awful year for him. Or 2022 was his best year, right? He had 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, right? Geno Smith gets paid. Well, this year, in 2023, his yards per attempt is about the same, right around that 7.5, 7.3. He's still right around that 65 to 70% completion percentage. Like 65% completion percentage is still really good. It was about 70% the year before, but that's because he was having an amazing year. But even with that being said, he goes from a 76.1 passing rate to an 82.1. So he's actually a better graded passer. And then big time throw to turnover worthy play rate, he actually had a better ratio this year. He actually had 32 big time throws to 34, despite having like 70 less attempts on the season, which is pretty crazy, right? So his big time throw rate goes up from 5.6% to 6%. His turnover worthy play percentage actually went down from 4.2% to 3.6%. So that's really good. His ADOT stayed the same. And then the big one there at the end is drop percentage. He went from 14 drops to 22. So the drop percentage from his receivers doubled. And then on top of that, you had Shane Waldron like scheming JSN in like poor ways, and Geno Smith was banged up. There's a lot going on. And even still, Geno seemed fine, right? He seemed like right about what he's been over the last 2 years, that he's like revived his career here. I don't think that's just going to fall off a cliff for him. As much as like that seems like maybe that's likely, it seems like he'll get another year here in Seattle. And I'm very excited for this new offensive coordinator. They're bringing in the Washington offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubbs, here. And you can see we can pull some things. Now, of course. He had Mike Penix, he had Roma Dunze, he had Jalen McMillan, he had Jalen Polk. They had dogs on this team. But we can pull his tendencies. And we can see plays per game was ranked number 77th in college football. That's about league average. Plays per game, he was up tempo, right? What's that? Tied for 19th, I believe. So they passed the ball a ton. They didn't run the ball a ton. They were 118th in rushing plays per game, which is just rush attempts per game. They were tied for 19th in passing plays per game, and they're about league average in volume, pace of play. So they are going to be about league average in terms of their pace of play, and they're going to lean towards the pass. And you have a lot of upside with that because we've seen his offense work. It could be explosions. You have as well a lot of weapons here, right? You have Metcalf, you have Lockett, you have JSN, and like a year two breakout. Like all these people love JSN. They love the wide receivers on this team, and like Geno is just like chilling behind them. And I think that we could see again where he's just like this massive value like he was in 2022. So I really like Geno Smith. Again, he's like way cheaper. Like to me, he's 3 years younger than Kirk Cousins and not coming off an Achilles tear, and he's like the same, archetype of pocket passer with a lot of weapons around him. I love the idea of downgrading off of like a Kirk or a Baker or like even higher end like Goff or Tua for a Geno Smith, where it's like your QB2 is holding a lot of value, but he's not giving you he's not giving you top 6 point per game production. So I don't mind selling Geno Smith in those spots. Let's see what he's trading for. I do think that he's going to be pretty cheap when we look at this. Let's see. So we look at what he's trading for on Dynasty Daddy. Purdy for Walker, Freiermuth, and Geno. I don't hate that. I mean, Rodgers for Geno plus is crazy. The 212 for Geno straight up. I think I would. Zach Moss for Geno straight up. Yeah. Kirk Cousins and Laporta for McBride, Metcalf, and Geno. Wow. That's about even. I don't love it. What else? Anything else stick out here in terms of what you can buy Geno for? Geno for Fields straight up. I don't love that. Let's see. A future second and a future third for Geno. That feels a little bit steep, but I would be open to it. Wandale in a second for Geno feels steep. 203 for Geno in the 309 feels steep. Do I like anything here? Evans and Garoppolo for Pollard and Geno. I don't hate that. 206 for Geno. That's okay. No late seconds. You can't get him for a late second. I could have sworn we saw a late second. 205, 206. Dotson in the 208. So I guess it's more like mid-second to late second. I think I would prefer... I would try... If I was buying him, I'd want anything past like the 206 in terms of volume, in terms of value. I do want to see if there's any other decent trades on here. Hopkins a third and a fourth for Lockett and Geno. I think I'd actually do that. This I actually like a ton. Let's see. Rodgers, and that's just not going to happen. I'm not even going to entertain those. Eckler for Geno straight up. I don't hate it. Goff for Goddard and Geno. No, I can't do that. McCaffrey and Geno for Purdy and Goff. That one I don't love. If you can downgrade from Carr to Geno in a third, yes, I would do that as well. I also think Geno's a great... If you have Metcalf, Jason, any of those guys, I like the idea of buying him just to kind of correlate. So yeah, I think that just about does it. This is what I'm talking about. Like these where it's just like absolute junk. Because I do think you can pluck him off rosters for very cheap. I'd want... My target would be late second. I do love this. If you can do 2 seconds for Derrick Henry and Geno, that's amazing. If I could sell Russ for Geno in 211, I think I would. Now, that's going to do it for us today. That is 6 must-buy low trade targets in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Again, if you want access to my entire Dynasty rankings update, if you have a startup coming up, if you just want to make trades, again, for every single position group, I have buys, sells, soft sells, hard buys, soft buys, hard sells, all that good stuff. It's all there. The RS grade database is there. My rookie rankings is there. Trade advice in the higher tiers is there. It's all on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, I do appreciate you just watching this video. This was 55 minutes. This is why I was actually going to do, the plan was to do a must buy and sell trade targets video, but I got a bit carried away with Justin Herbert. So I decided we'll split it up. Expect a sell version of this video either Thursday or Friday. One of the two, we will have that out to all of you. So with that being said, I love you all, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm